Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Relaxing as per usual. Today, late night, because of course, D&D today. How was the episode? As if we're like shooting a film series or something. How was the series? The series? What's going on in my brain? How was the session? That's a word. I was pretty decent. You know, I feel like it was again, it feels like a bit of a transitionary thing where we're sort of transitioning out from the mini arc within this arc. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:33 PM on Monday, May 12th, 2025. Certainly some big discussions and some connections being made. I mean, because the players now, or not players, the characters are level 9, which means that we're basically almost into tier 3 gameplay in D&D. Which is interesting because if you don't know, there's basically different tiers of D&D where they're split up in levels 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and then 16 to 20. And then I think there's technically tier 5, which goes like beyond level 20, which is just meant to be like 20 plus in general. I like it as is. And it's interesting because it doesn't it's been over a year, so I guess it's probably about time that they start entering tier 3. But when you think about tier 3, it's like when they're starting to get to like a very powerful stage. My shovel, no. And it's interesting to sort of reflect upon, because obviously the story arcs, things which I planned out, are not things I, at the time of planning them, I was like, I'm not exactly sure when they'll run into it. Depends how often they'll chase it, depends which makes sense to come first and which ones don't. And some of them I was like, okay, this one only makes sense to do in a later time during the story, this one only makes sense to do at this point, etc, etc, who knows. But yeah, it's interesting to think about them sort of tackling the story arcs, but then also being like, yeah, but actually like pretty like in canon in the universe, pretty strong at this point. Like they are very capable now because they're like pretty decent magic casters. Like there's not that we're not getting that, we're getting a shovel. There's not meant to be that many other, it's like it's meant to be relatively uncommon, I suppose, to be able to get to that level in a canon sense. So the fact we're there is sort of just like I guess it's a reminder that yes, they are actually playing like pretty strong characters at this point. Which sort of needs to reframe my mindset, I think, if anything, because obviously, when we're in like tier 1 play, if they're just like, I want to try and take on this like very strong being or something, in tier 1 play it's very easy to be like, obviously you're going to die if you do that, so you would intrinsically know as a character that's a bad idea. But they're getting to the stage where it's like, okay, now it's actually pretty plausible for you to do that. You could legitimately, I don't know, like one of my group, not this group today, have this ongoing joke about them taking out all these storm giants, and there really wasn't much to it. It was just like at that time I needed what was like a high level commission, one that seemed pretty dangerous, and it was basically, there's like a group of like 1,000 storm giants terrorizing this town. That one, unsurprisingly, was 100% improvised, because it has, you can tell it's improvised because it has essentially no bearing whatsoever on the existing plot. But we're getting to the level where they could legitimately take out one storm giant. I don't think they could take out like 10 at the same time or anything like that, but I mean, if they wanted to, if they really, really committed to it, they could probably, organise something about it. And yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up, I suppose, is because one of the characters in this part of the campaign is basically I'm not going to give away spoilers because I'm not going to give away D&D spoilers in the middle of an Animal Crossing thing. But what we do know, of course, is that the fact that they are like certain. They have a patron who is basically like manipulating them, I suppose, taking advantage of them. The character, the player knows that. The character maybe kind of is starting to know that. I don't know. And it's interesting to think about because obviously when you're in like lower level tiers of play, it's like, I'm going to go against my patron, and my patron will be like, how dare you? I mean, just like, obviously this might not be exactly how it pans out, but you can imagine it happening. How dare you? And it's like smites you. Like I'm thinking, actually I was going to say a Baldur's Gate 3 spoiler, so I'm not going to say that. But I mean, it's a very classic thing. I mean, you're indebted to this higher deity, I suppose, and you go against it. You are just but a mere puny mortal, and then if you go against it, then there's going to be retaliation. But then, like, at some point, hopefully, they will hit level 20 or get close to level 20. And level 20 is meant to be, like, on the level of, like, well, not literal deities, in my mind, but they're, like, quasi-deities. They're sort of, like, getting there. They're, like, they're meant to be, like, some of the strongest people around. So, it's interesting to think about, because I don't know exactly how the story's going to resolve itself. And, you know, that's entirely up to how my players approach it. But, like, I had this, like, sort of moment of reconciliation. It's like, what if we just, like, get to level 20 and my player's just like, you know what, screw you, patron, I'm going to fight my patron. You know, I can't have that intrinsic mindset, which I carry from tier 1, being like, oh, your patron's just going to smite you down, because, you know, once I hit tier 20, level 20, it's going to be like, oh, they could potentially put up a fight now at this point. You probably could take down a deity. Like, an adventuring party level 20s, yeah, they could probably fight a god. Why not? I don't see why not. That's kind of like how it goes. So I've got to like reframe it, being like, they're halfway there, essentially. They're a lot stronger than maybe than I need. Then maybe they even know, and I get them credit for. So it's interesting to think about, because it was brought up, because I'm not exactly going to say what has happened. It is something which I have thought about before, but essentially one of my players, there's a lot of curses going around. The players just hit level 9, so the person, the bard, was just like, I'll take Greater Restoration because it can cure curses. And it's obviously something I thought about, being like, what if they just like cured a curse or that sort of thing? And, you know, there is a debate to be like, oh, if that person is cursed, then they should just be able to use Greater Restoration. It will be cured, just like that. Maybe that will happen, maybe it won't. I'm not going to say exactly. But I also think, as a DM, you sort of like not have a burden, but you have a responsibility to make an engaging story, and I think that would be a very unengaging story, to be like, oh, you know what happened, I just got strong enough and then I got rid of that thing. Like, there's no catharsis, I suppose, tied within that. So it's definitely something that I've thought about. And I will say that the story doesn't necessarily have to end just like that, but certainly players should also be rewarded at the same time. So taking that spell as a choice over taking something else which could be useful in a different situation is an investment as well, because it costs money to use. There should be a reflection of that using it gives some benefit, because I think it would be super lame as a DM for me to be like, oh, you know, that wasn't exactly how I wanted my plot to go, so I'm sorry, that doesn't work. It's not on my plate to sort of determine what exactly the player might find cathartic. Maybe the player would be like, yes, I think it's great that I can just use Greater Restoration, and then boom, that issue is resolved. Maybe the player wouldn't. So basically I'm just trying to keep it like ambiguous, because obviously I don't want to be like, oh yes, it will work, or no, it won't work. But I guess what I will say is that the story arc, the character still has story to continue. However, whichever way it gets resolved is perhaps the most, I want to say, obscure way I can do it without delving into more specifics. But yeah, I do think Act 2 is probably going to wrap up pretty soon for that group. The other group has done a sort of weird thing where Act 2 has not really gone as I intended, so I think it's more likely that elements from Act 2 and Act 3 are going to now smush together, and they're going to sort of get like an Act 2 and 3 at the same time, or the definition of Act 2 is going to sort of change. Because while I certainly had something in mind for Act 2, things have not gone exactly according to plan, and thus the pacing, they're still making progress, but now they're like making progress in different avenues rather than just this Act avenue. So you know, you've got to kind of keep everything in balance, keep everything in mind. But it's unsurprisingly, there's a lot which goes into DMing. And exhausting in a good way, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. It's just interesting, because like tiers of play in D&D is like not something I had to think about. I've ever had to really think about, because I mean, all the campaigns that I've played in have, the highest one got to level 7, I think, which is about partway through tier 2, and now they're one more level and they're basically in tier 3. which is interesting. You know, I got to reframe my mindset, because D&D is the definition from level 1 all the way to level 20, and all the sort of ranges and experiences you have there within. It's not defined just by the early game. It means that, like, things need to scale up as well, you know, the problems that they need to face, and the challenges, etc, etc. And, I mean, I did build the campaigns in mind, essentially with the end game of tier 4 play. You know, like, the overarching threats are tier 4 level threats, because that's what they should be. And I was like, okay, like, the character ones will probably range anywhere from tier 1 to tier 3. And some can be continuous, some won't be. And to me, I think it's a very difficult balance to get exactly right. Because some characters, obviously, you come in and being like, okay, this, like, story doesn't even make sense until you start getting to tier 3, and some, like, this can be resolved, like, before tier 2 even maybe begins if you're not careful. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, the overall important thing for me is to make sure that the characters still have motivations to continue, no matter the tier or level of play they're at, and even if they're organised in such a way to be able to sort of try and smoothly fit within this timeline. It's odd to sort of reframe everything, because everything I know about D&D is basically from tier 1 play, and then a bit of tier 2 play, and then going into tier 3 play is sort of just like a whoa. We're going into uncharted territories. I don't even know what it'd be like in tier 4 play, because at least tier 3 play I've seen gameplay of. Like, I've watched Critical Role probably up to about, like, I think we hit level 12, I'm gonna say, and where I watch, so I have, like, an idea of what tier 3 play is like, but tier, like, 4 play I've got, like, no idea. Like, that's, at that point they should be on, like, world ending threats. Right? And I'm like, how does that incorporate? How do I get the gravitas of a situation across? Because there's an interesting caveat, I think, not caveat, but like an interesting sort of difficulty, where I think when you're in tier 1 play, it feels like every NPC that is notable needs to be pretty strong, right? Like, to peek behind the curtain, I suppose, a little bit, about, like, some of the starting NPCs in, I'm not going to say which campaigns, and I'm not going to say who, were, like, roughly, like, level 6ish or something, but now level 6 is, like, they're a decent amount stronger than level 6 now. So, you know, things that they met early on may no longer, like, meet that requirement. Like, they used to be seen as pretty strong, and now they're not. Which is, I mean, that's just how life works, I suppose, in general, but it's very interesting to sort of reflect and think about, I think. Changing your mindset with regards to it, to be like, how exactly can I reframe this? How can I scale things up? And I don't know if there really is an easy answer, and I don't think there necessarily can be an easy answer. But it just sort of is, like, wow. Strange to think about is perhaps the way I put it. Strange to sort of reflect upon. And I guess, if anything, it's more of a testament to look at the journey that's been gone through. Like, one more year, I don't think I'll be into tier 4 play. I think probably one more year we'll be into tier 4 play, and I imagine, like, the next year, or half a year or something, will be the final stages of a campaign, where things start to get wrapped up. I don't know. Because obviously they didn't stand too long in tier 1 play, because I think tier 1 play is when it starts, it's not that interesting. But as, like, one of my players say, it's like, now we're getting access to the interesting spells, and it's like, you absolutely are. And now it's going to be even harder, I think, as a DM, because I'm just like, you're going to throw things my way, and I'm going to be like, wow, okay, I didn't even think about the fact that you can do that. You're going into sort of, like, not meta breaking, but very much sort of breaking the boundaries of certain things here and there, and I'm like, am I going to be prepared for that? Am I not? I don't know. Who can say? But yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think genuinely it is a good thing. It just is weird, I think, to think about. It's like, what will this entail? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know what this will mean. But I think that's kind of the fun of it. To think about what it means. To actually know that the characters are growing, I suppose, in a sense. To know that things are progressing. And hopefully my players are having a fun time and invested in the story from the start and to the end. And if they're not, then, well, not really much I can do about at this point. Well, it is what it is. So yeah, but here's a play. I never really thought I'd get this far. I mean, when I started a campaign, it'd be like, I think it'd be nice to be able to go from level 1 to 20, but whether that be even remotely feasible or not, I don't know. So, the fact we're actually getting there is crazy. Like, what is that even gonna like look like? What is that gonna even entail? What's it gonna be like when we enter tier 4 play and like, you know, the NPCs, the allies they've made who are like in tier 2 or tier 3 level? We'll be looking up to them the same way that they looked up to them at the beginning of the thing. I mean, obviously, a lot of the NPCs can scale as well, because it's not like the NPCs are the only one who grow throughout this game. And some of the NPCs have leveled up with them. But eventually, you know, it's not every NPC can hit level 20. That doesn't make sense. So what's going to happen? I don't know. It's going to be also ambiguous. And it's, you know, I think, you know, if anything, I'm sort of like reflecting upon it a lot, because it just sort of became more readily apparent in this session more than anything. When it was just like, oh yeah, my players now have access to greater restoration. While I did take that into account with the story when I was building it, I can't believe that it's happening now. Because like, obviously when you're starting out with stories, it's like, oh, that's way off. That's level 9 that we can get greater restoration. That's so far away. But now we're here, in the not far away, when we exist now. So, what's that mean? I don't know. We're just going to have to find out. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to round this episode off here. So, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.